Today, we will talk about the current state of the Democratic Party and its possible presidential nomination for 2024. Most mainstream Democrats and their media allies refuse to acknowledge that President Joe Biden has some serious competition for the party's 2024 presidential nomination, but that doesn't negate the fact that he does. Environmental lawyer and activist Robert F. Kennedy Jr. declared his candidacy earlier this month and began polling in the double digits. According to a just-released Fox News survey, his stock is rising among Democratic voters. Comedian Bill Maher, host of HBO's Real Time, recently discussed RFK Jr.'s increasing popularity while Biden's approval sinks to its lowest point of his presidency. Maher said, "I'm surprised that right off the bat, he's polling at 19%, in response to RFK Jr.'s increasing popularity." Meanwhile, spiritual guru and former 2020 presidential hopeful Marianne Williamson only got 9% in the same survey. Several other polls showed as much as 70% of Americans don't want Biden to seek re-election, which proves people are looking for alternatives. The Democratic Party leadership is moving behind the scenes to protect the incumbent despite the fact that most of the party's voters want to move on from Biden, who many argue is clearly struggling physically and mentally. The party's leadership will not have any debates, and there is going to be no primary debates. RFK Jr. is running as a Democrat, but if he decides to run as a third-party candidate, there will be a situation. Sorry to interrupt, but before we continue, please support us by sharing and subscribing to our channel, The American Republic. Your support helps us continue to bring you important stories like this one. Kennedy's controversial past positions and rhetoric include his opposition to vaccines, proposal to jail climate change deniers, and praise for former Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez. Maher rejected those who accuse RFK Jr. of getting COVID wrong while pointing out how the US government got a lot wrong. He said, "He might be getting stuff wrong, but he's not a nut. And he's not a nut about COVID either or vaccines." RFK Jr. pointed out that under Biden's administration, the majority of Americans are struggling economically. He said, "We have 57% of American citizens could not put their hands on $1,000 if they have an emergency. A quarter of our citizens are hungry. We're cutting welfare and food stamps by 90%, and we're paying for a war that, we can't afford," he said, a reference to the tens of billions sent to Ukraine. "And the way that we do this is by printing money. We've printed 10 centuries of money in the last 14 years. And that is what causes inflation, which raises food prices and which is a tax on the poor. We've raised food prices for basic foods like chicken, dairy, and milk by 76% in the last 2 years. And now we're cutting people's food stamps and bailing out banks the same month. It doesn't make any sense, and we need to get rid of this kind of corporate control government," RFK Jr. told Carlson. It's time to acknowledge that there are serious contenders in the Democratic Party for the 2024 presidential nomination, and RFK Jr. is one of them. The party's leadership must listen to its voters and provide an opportunity for other candidates to showcase their platform. RFK Jr. is advocating for policies that will benefit the majority of Americans, and it's time to take his message seriously. We need to address the corporate control government and the economic struggles that are affecting millions of Americans. It's time for change, and RFK Jr. may be the candidate to bring it.